Welcome to a very special edition of the UGAsports.com live podcast. Here we have myself, Brent Rollins, Dayne Young, you know him, but we also have a extremely special guest with us today, and that would be Mr. Jeff Foxworthy, who was just telling us that has a lot, not a lot going on right now, so he's really raring to talk Georgia football.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in this COVID year, if you think about laughter, you know, you're expelling. And so I've canceled 62 concerts, a Netflix special, and 2 TV shows. So in fact, my calendar came up this morning and said, no events scheduled, which is the same thing that it has said for the last 9 months. So we got plenty of time to talk Georgia football.
Well, Jeff, I guess I think now's a good time to tell you this is not a paid appearance to make up for some of those lost work times. So apologies there.
All right. Well, I'll see y'all later.
Yeah. So what has that been like? What for you? Who I'm assuming someone who's normally extremely busy and your calendar is full to a completely empty calendar.
It was really an adjustment. I probably had never been. I've been doing stand up for 36 years, and I don't think I've ever been 2 weeks without going on stage or being on an airplane. And, you know, now it's been, you know, close to 10 months. And the thing is, I still love it. I still, which I consider myself blessed to be a guy that's done something for that long and still love what I do. So I've just missed it. Though it has been really cool to find out what it's like to sleep in the same bed for a week in a row and, you know, to be around my wife, but I'll be glad, and we'll probably be some of the last people to come back, I would imagine. You know, I've always said I thought laughter it doesn't make your problems go away, but it's kind of the release valve that keeps the boiler from exploding. That and live music are kind of the two things that are, you know, that hour and a half, 2 hour escape, and then you go back and deal with your problems. Well, this year, that's the two things that are totally missing is comedy and live music at a time kind of when we need them the most.
And at least we got sports back. And that sort of,
oh my God. Oh, you know, there was a time there in August when I was just rolled up in a ball going, please God, please God, please God, let us have football this fall, please. And so thankfully, even though, you know, kind of a crazy version of it, we have had football. So,
well, good. So before we get into this season and Georgia football and recruiting, because that's a passion of yours that we're going to get into. So what about sort of the start, your start? Like, I know you went to Tech, but your Georgia football fandom, where did it begin? How has that sort of come about throughout your life?
Well, my folks split up early in life. And so I went to live with my grandparents, and my granddaddy, who was a fireman in Hateville, Georgia, home of the first Chick-fil-A, was a giant Bulldog fan. And, you know, of course, I'm old, so that was back in the days before everything was televised. But I remember sitting around, we'd listen to every Georgia football game on the radio. We'd listen to every Georgia basketball game on the radio. And so, you know, from my granddad at a very early age, I just became a rabid Georgia fan. And when I went to college, I had to live at home. I didn't have any money. And in fact, I had to work full time. I worked in a grocery store, worked at Kroger. And, but because I had to live at home, I had to go to the closest school to home, which was Tech. Yeah, and I hated Tech. I got in a fight sitting in the Tech student section during the Tech Georgia game because I was rooting for Georgia sitting in the Tech student section. And then they kicked me out. Well, they didn't kick me out. They invited me to take some time off after about 3 years. But it always goes all over me when people write about me and they say, yeah, he's a Tech guy. I'm like, no, I am not a Tech guy. Never been a Tech guy.
So in terms of going to games, was it just a Tech, or did you actually go to games in Sanford as well?
Oh, no. In Hateville, there was a guy named Joe Strickland that would load up a school bus, and every Saturday they would go up to Athens, to Georgia games. And so, you know, I had an opportunity 2 or 3 times to go up and go to Sanford Stadium and watch the Dogs live. But we didn't have a lot of money for that. But you know, I was invested at a very early age.
So what's like the biggest game you remember? Like if someone said, hey, what's the number 1 Georgia game in your Rolodex? What do you go to?
You know, I got banned. I still do have a real good friendship with Mark Richt. And so I would do Georgia's FCA banquets, kind of host them for years and years. And so Mark invited me to sit in his box to watch the blackout game against Alabama. And if you'll remember, you know, we were down, 30-0 at halftime. And then Mark told me I was never allowed to come to another Georgia game after that.
So speaking of that, where do you recall exactly where you were on 2nd and 26? I know we unfortunately have to ask that, or have to go there.
I know exactly where I was. You know, probably like a lot of people in this state, the previous year had suffered through, you know, the Falcons are up 28-3. And my youngest daughter's a big Falcons fan, and we're watching, and I mean, it's halfway through the 3rd quarter, and she goes, Dad, oh my God, we're going to win the Super Bowl. And I looked at her, and I just, you know, put my finger to my lips, and I said, don't say that. And of course, everybody knows that feeling. You're like, this is not possible. And so fast forward to the next year, national championship game, 2nd and 26. And you're thinking, this is over. We've just won this football game. And Tua completes the pass. I never said a word. I sat there, flipped off I didn't want to watch Alabama celebrate, flipped off the TV, walked down the hall into the bedroom, turned off all the lights and pulled the covers over my head. And my wife was like, I don't know if he's going to be alive when the sun comes up tomorrow morning. I mean, that was as bad as it gets. I mean, that's the kind that I used to have a buddy that would say, instead of beating you 100-0, he said, I would rather beat you by 1 point with no time left on the clock on a controversial play that the replay clearly shows the official was wrong. He said, those are the ones that eat your soul for the rest of your life. And that's what, you know, 2nd and 26 will always eat my soul.
You mentioned Mark Richt. Do you have a friendship or relationship with Kirby Smart?
I do. Yeah. I like Kirby. So, you know, I get to about once a year during the summer, go up and watch a practice. And I still do a lot of stuff for their FCA with Thomas Settles and all. And so, yeah, I'm very blessed. Had a real good friendship with Sam Pittman. And so, yeah, I get to hang on the fringes and, you know, live vicariously through the Dogs.
I think you and Sam Pittman is the start to a pretty good little dinner party.
Yeah, right. Hey, Sam's doing a good job. I'm happy for him.
Very much so. So speaking of Sam and then this season, so what were your expectations of Georgia football this season, sort of pre-Jamie Newman opt-out, post-Jamie Newman opt-out? How did that change things for you?
I mean, I was really excited about Jamie coming, you know, and then it's worst case scenario. I mean, like I had watched DeJuan for a couple of years up and knew he was a big kid, knew he could run, knew he could throw the ball. But, you know, Jamie had that experience. And so when somebody opts out 2 weeks before the season starts, I was so hyped before then because I knew our defense was so good. It was like, we don't have to score 40 points a game. Our defense is so good. You know, if we can score 21, 28 a game, we got a chance to win this whole thing. And of course, Jamie opts out and then it's DeJuan. And, you know, probably like you guys, that first game of the year against Arkansas, you know, you go in thinking, all right, we're going to steamroll these guys. And that first half, was just, I mean, it was a 2nd and 26 feeling. You're like, we can't move the football. And so I guess my expectations for the season greatly diminished in the first half of football for the season, because I knew the schedule was so front loaded, that we had to play Auburn, had to play Alabama, Tennessee, who I think everybody thought was going to be better than they were. But like a Georgia fan, you get optimistic, and then you get kicked square between the legs, and then you get back up and you get optimistic again. And so, when
so is that optimism
Daniels,
is that optimism now sort of there with?
Oh yeah, sky high, gonna win it all again. But JT, you get a little peek into what this could be, and Kirby's done a lot of things really well. Like when he first came in, he said both lines, both sides of the ball have to get better. That was the first thing Kirby said. Well, he's done that. First it was the O line, but the last year or two, the D line has been great, and they just keep reloading there. And so that happened. I think that maybe we've been a little stubborn about playing, 1980s Georgia football or 1990s Georgia football, just running it down everybody's throat. And I love to be able to, if you can run the ball, you can beat anybody, but the game has evolved and the game has changed. And I feel like we've kind of lagged behind, opening it up some and being able to score points.
Well, now with JT and then sort of the bevy of receivers, and if all that's sort of coming back, the expectations next year maybe and the optimism are going to be, like you said, sky high.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like Jermaine Burton, I think Jermaine Burton's going to be one of the best receivers ever at Georgia. And everybody talks about Pickens, and Pickens is just a special athlete, but I think Burton is too, and you forget about Dominic, who really had started coming on in the second half of the season in 19. I mean, I think we're going to be low and curious. I mean, we're loaded at receiver.
Do you have a rival that you hate the most? I mean, should I assume that that's Georgia Tech because of your ties there, or
well,
is
Dayne,
it someone else?
I do, but you would be wrong assuming it was Tech. This is the two worst things that have happened in 2020 in this order: losing to Florida, and then the coronavirus. I cannot stand Florida. The ugliest uniforms in the history of football.
It goes against the theory I had, though, because I've always thought people that I've known from West Georgia, they hate Auburn the most because they grew up around Auburn people. And I'm from Middle and South Georgia, so then it's a lot of Florida haters there. I mean, I grew up in East Dublin, Georgia. You just don't find, a whole lot of people that have anything toward Georgia Tech because Atlanta feels so far away. But that goes against the grain, what you're saying.
I mean, it probably does, but like I live in Atlanta, but I have a farm down between LaGrange and Columbus, which is in down there. So many people, probably more Auburn fans than Georgia fans down there. But my daughter went to Auburn. Two of my nieces went to Auburn. It was kind of one of those, when I went there with my daughter to check out the college, I went, this is a kind of cool place. I don't hate Auburn. And so I root for Auburn, except when they play Georgia. I don't hate Auburn. Florida is a different story. I can't stand Florida.
So if Dan Mullen texts you and says, "Hey, can I get some backstage?" Are you just ignoring that?
No, I'm not ignoring it. I'm texting back and I'm saying, hell no, that's not happening.
You got to have a Spurrier story somewhere. There's no way that you two didn't cross circles.
Well, you know what's funny is my younger brother, Jay, played football at Duke. He was a middle linebacker. And so he was there in the early 80s when Spurrier was the OC there. And so they have a Duke Children's Hospital, which is kind of like St. Jude's, in that they don't turn kids away based on ability to pay. And so they have to fundraise like crazy. So for almost 20 years, my wife and I were head of fundraising for the Duke Children's Hospital. And so we had a golf tournament, and Spurrier would come up there every year and play. And I was just, the first night, I'm like, I'm not going to talk to him. I'm not going to, I'm just going to pretend like he's not here. And then he walked over and somebody introduced us, and he's really good at what he does. He's funny as rip. But he just knew how to push buttons, and probably to his advantage, I think, because, he just got under our skin all the time. But it wasn't just us. It was Tennessee. It was Florida State. He just knew how to push buttons. And I think Mullen tries to do that, like, listing the attendance for our spring game, but he's just not good at it. Spurrier was good at it. Mullen's not.
Spurrier could go on tour with you guys. I mean, he's that kind of funny.
Oh, he is that kind of funny. I mean, like, it's just sitting around telling stories. It's kind of like being at the Waffle House with Ron White. You'll be beating the table, So.
Well, one of the big reasons we wanted to talk to you is because sort of I've heard through the grapevine that you are quite into recruiting, and we have early signing day coming up next week. And so what are your thoughts right now on the Dogs class and how things are looking, and how big into recruiting are you?
I'm not that big into it. I mean, there's some days I don't even look at it at all.
Just a few days.
And then there's some days that it'll be 11:30 at night and I'm watching the tape of some outside linebacker from, Florence, Alabama. And my wife's like, "You're nuts. You're out of your mind." No, I've got a group of friends. There's 4 of us, and we have a group text, and we talk recruiting 12 months a year. So this time, and we all want to take credit for everybody that Georgia signs, So like when Nyland Green signed a couple of days ago, I'm the first one on the thing. Boom, Nyland Green. I've recruited this kid for 3 years. I can't believe I landed it, And so, that we kind of do that funny stuff. So
if I, so if you, obviously, Nyland Green, then obviously you have probably a wish list that many Georgia fans have with 2 very highly rated defensive linemen / edge rusher players, Mr. Smith and Mr. Foreman.
Yeah, Corey Foreman and Mason Smith, who, this is the time. In fact, I shouldn't even tell you this, but so this morning I'm sitting, let me think of a delicate way to say this. I'm sitting in the smallest room of my house this morning with my phone in hand, searching Georgia recruiting rumors. I don't even need facts at this point. I just need rumors. And that's
You're a junkie.
Huh?
You're a junkie.
I am a junkie. But that's one of the most, like, this last 2 weeks before signing day. Kirby has a way of pulling out a couple of booms, right there at the end, the surprise thing, like flipping Pickens, on signing day. But last year getting Darnell Washington and Keely Ringo right there at the end. And so I'm thinking there's going to be a couple of booms, and maybe that's the optimist in me. But, what's the other kid from South Florida, Williams, the safety? Yeah.
Committed to Miami right now.
Well, he's committed to Miami, but then you go troll rumor boards, and a lot of people think that might be a flip. And, because I have a feeling we're about to get decimated in the defensive backfield. And so that's somewhere that we really need to reload. And so, I'm kind of looking at all the DBs because I think we do such a great job of developing them. I think we're about to get, about to lose.
So you see Stokes, Campbell, obviously Richard LeCounte's going, but you see those guys going ahead and going pro.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Daniels graduated. I mean, he's a senior,
and he's going to Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and Richard's gone. I'll miss. That's a damn good dog right there, Richard LeCounte. But I think Tyson's going to go. You know, I think Stokes will probably go. You know, and that's the other thing. Like, I remember Kirby's first signing class, National Signing Day. I'm down at my farm. I'm on a tractor and I'm plowing, but I've got this text going on the tractor, and we had like 3 spots open up. I mean, still available. And if you'll remember, all of them were DBs. It was like Amir Speed and Stokes, and they were all 3 stars. But I have a theory. I don't look at stars so much, because to me, if Alabama or Clemson or Georgia is recruiting a kid that's a 3-star, he's not really a 3-star. You know, Jordan Davis was a 3-star. I think it's a kid that probably hadn't been to a lot of camps. A lot of people don't have film on him. And so Stokes was a 3-star, you know, and a lot of people wouldn't get excited about that. But, you know, kind of in my mind, I was like, no, this kid's good, or we wouldn't be signing him.
So is there a diamond in the rough that you've researched more than anybody already in this year's sort of commit class that you're like, all right, this kid is, watch out, he might not be the most highly rated, but he's going to be a player?
You know, well, there's a kid that we don't have yet, but we just offered, called Jimmy Horn. And if you go watch tape on him, you know, the college game is so much about speed. And this kid, he reminds me like of Isaiah McKenzie or McCole. He has that kind of crazy speed. And so, you know, as I'm watching his tape this week, I'm going, we could use somebody like that, whether it's, you know, punt returns or, you know, put them in the slot or something. Speed like that, that's where game-changing plays come from.
So you probably enjoyed watching Arian Smith catch his first pass.
Oh my God, love that, love that. Yeah, man, because, you know, you're kind of rooting for this kid who doesn't have a lot of football experience, but he can fly. And, you know, and then to see him make a nice catch and actually get into a game this year and score a touchdown, you're like, yeah, that's stack them up, buddy. We're going to load up at receiver, and we're going to open this thing up next year.
You know, Jeff, I'm not so sure that you should be, you know, trying to reschedule your concerts, because if you're this much into recruiting, and then if the transfer market opens up and everyone gets a free transfer, I'm not so sure you're going to have the time for it.
I know.
We probably need to tell Roddy, hey, we have an extra, maybe a position on staff. We know a guy. We know a guy.
We know a guy. Well, and here's the part of the reason I troll the recruiting board so much, and I have mentioned this to Kirby, but I still have 4 years of eligibility left. I haven't done a lot of camps and all, but you know, the knock on me was that I was too skinny. But during this COVID year, I've really put a lot of weight on, and so I'm kind of hoping maybe I get an offer this year.
What position do you want to play?
God almighty, when you go to a Georgia practice and you watch how fast these kids are and how hard they hit, it was like the first time I ever went to practice. I'm like, and I played football yet, you know, every year in high school. I'm like, there is not enough money in the world for me to go out there. And I mean, it's crazy, the speed of the game.
I remember the first time I stood beside Julian Rochester. He was a true freshman, 18-year-old kid, you know, just brand new to Athens. And I'm like, how in the world is he this way? I didn't know humans were made that way.
Well, you know, Dayne, the first Georgia practice I ever went to, and I'm a big outdoors guy. I love to bow hunt, love to fish, love to look for arrowheads. I'm a big outdoors guy. So the first practice I go to, at the end of it, Ben Cleveland comes over, and Ben goes, hey, can we get a picture together, you and me? And so I pull this picture up all the time to show people. I go, look at Ben next to me. This is like two different species of human beings. His arms look like my thighs. You know, it's just insane how big these guys are.
Well, so let's combine that. So let's speak different species and then rumors. How much was your text feed going crazy the other night when the Eric Gilbert news / rumors / all of that kind of came about?
It was blowing up a little bit, you know, because you think about
sad.
Think about Eric with Darnell Washington, you know, and I think Darnell's going to be fabulous as well. But think about the two of them out there together, you know, and you can't put him in a box because you can almost play him at wide receiver. I mean, but yeah, how huge would that be?
Well, obviously those are all just rumors right now, and
they're all just rumors, yeah. But we live on rumors, don't we? I mean,
very, very much so.
Do you have a favorite all-time player or someone that you just really enjoy? I don't know if you knew him personally or just someone that you enjoyed watching the most.
Well, I mean, based on my age, it was, you know, I remember Herschel's first game. I remember that entire season. Herschel completely changed the football team. I mean, we went from being a good football team to the best team in the nation. So Herschel would be probably my all-time favorite dog. Pollock's, I just love the motor that he had. You know, Nolan Smith kind of reminds me a little bit of David. It's just kind of like never take a play off kind of guy. Jake Fromm and I, you know, we have a friendship. And again, it's the outdoor thing and the hunting thing and all. And so, I don't know. I mean, there's so many there's so many great dogs. But Herschel, if I had to pick one, would probably be it.
So have you been able to check in on Jake with his, you know, at his time in Buffalo, and the fact that he gets sort of put away from the rest of the QB room so they don't have an issue like the Broncos had?
Yeah, I was texting with him a few weeks ago, just checking in on him, and you know, I think it's like 130 below zero up there, and he's stuck in a hotel room and he can't see his girlfriend, and yeah, he can't go deer hunting, and I'm like, welcome to it as a job, buddy. You know, this is what it's like when it's your job. But yeah, I think he was ready to get back home and have some of Mom's cooking and get away from Buffalo for a little bit.
Well, so obviously we don't want to keep you too long, but what if you were to say, hey, here's
yeah, I've got a show in April, so Brent, you need to wrap this up.
Well, if there's a state of football, like, hey, I'm speaking to the Georgia fan base, and this is Jeff Foxworthy's state of Georgia football, what does that sound like?
I think it's really good. I think you know, I mean, and you have years like this. I mean, for the first 4 or 5 games of the year, we had the best defense in college football, and then we just got decimated by injuries. But, you know, we were beating Alabama halfway through the third quarter, and everybody looks at Alabama as being unbeatable. Halfway through the third quarter, we're beating Alabama with Stetson Bennett as our quarterback. And you just have some years where injuries don't seem to get you, and some years, you know, where they just keep piling up. And it's a shame that happened to our defense. I mean, you know, to lose so many guys, to lose Jordan and to lose Richard. And I mean, there was one game where people were going down, you know, it looked like a video of people getting shot from a bridge or something. I mean, it's like every other play, somebody laying down. But I think with Kirby, I think our defense is always going to be fine. I think, you know, as we evolve, and we got Monken, I think as we evolve and learn, you know, and Nick evolved. You know, I think when Kirby first got here, we were playing football like Alabama played football when Kirby was there. It was being able to grind it out on the ground and have a great defense. And the game has just changed in the last 5 years. And you still have to have a defense, because I mean, you look at like the Oklahomas of the world, that they never get anywhere in the playoffs because they can't play defense. They can air it out on you, but they can't play defense. And I think that's why Clemson and Alabama are so successful, is they can air it out on you, but they play defense as well. And I think that's what Georgia's becoming. I mean, you know, we got a chance now. We got a chance for back-to-back number one, being the number one team, you know, in recruiting. But worst case, for the last 5 years, having a team in the top three. So it's not a question of having the athletes. I think it's a question of strategy. And I think Kirby's kind of come around to that in this age of college football, you got to be able to score points. But if you can do that and you can play defense, you got a chance to win it all. And I think we're standing right on the precipice of that.
I know you've done shows in Athens before, but would you ever be interested in doing something on campus? I mean, they're increasing, it seems like, in non-COVID years, just concerts in Sanford Stadium or stuff in Stegman Coliseum.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I would definitely love to do something like that. Back when we were doing Blue Collar TV, we filmed it in Athens, about half of it, just because they were such great crowds up there. And so, you know, it was like doing a Saturday Night Live show, and I'd get in the car and drive up to Athens and, you know, stop by the varsity or whatever, and then go do a show and then drive back home. So, yeah, I've always loved going to Athens.
You hear that, Josh Brooks? He's ready to go.
Yeah, yep. Right? But I always have to get there early so I can go to the bookstore, you know, and my wife is like, what could you possibly need at the bookstore? I mean, I have, all right, see right there, that's the glass for the day. I have these Tervis tumblers. I think I have 9 Georgia, but they're all different. So that way I always know which one's my glass. I have 4 different Georgia coffee mugs. I have pajama pants, t-shirt. I mean, it's ridiculous. So yeah, I kind of live and breathe this.
The other question I had for you, because I was telling this to Brent earlier. When I grew up and going to church, there was always this great thing on Sundays where if your team won, you're going to shake hands with people and they're going to say, how about that game yesterday? But if your team lost, it was like someone died and like no one wanted to make eye contact. And I have to feel like you had some of those similar experiences too, where it means so much, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm kind of not kidding about the worst thing that happened in 2020 was losing to Florida. I mean, that will make me sick for another year. I mean, until we get to play them again. Just ruins your whole, not your day, not your weekend, not your month. It ruins your year to lose to them. And so, and you look back on it, you know, this, which is really mentally healthy, to play the what if game, because think about how many long passes where the guy was open and we missed him in the Florida game. And if JT had been in there, all you got to do is connect on 2 of those, and it's a different ball game. We beat them again. So yeah, you've got that soul torture to roll through the entire winter with. It's like, crap, we could have beaten them. It wasn't like getting blown out. It's like we could have beaten them again.
The whole world's waiting for a COVID vaccine, and you just want the cocktail party to happen sooner than it will.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, the vaccine would be nice too, but I want to beat Florida again.
So, you know, again, we don't want to take any more of your time. We're taking 40 minutes of your time. That's, I know you said you don't have anything to do, but still, we can't thank you enough for joining us today and talking Georgia football, because, you know, we all love it and we follow it, and probably not as much as you actually.
So, all right. So you guys tell me what's going to be, you know, you study this, what's going to be the big boom here right here as we get to the finish line? And I know you don't know, we're all guessing at this point. And you know, I won't say which coach told me this, but a coach said to me one time, he said, you know, it's a little weird that my ability to feed my family is based on the emotional decisions of elevated 18-year-olds. So you never know what's going to happen. But what do you got a gut feeling or think maybe?
Well, I will say Dayne and I think pretty sure Dayne is, I might be as well, because I just live right down or live close to Prince Avenue. We're going to go watch someone who is already in tow and fully a sort of dog. And I think that matters just as much as the possibilities of others.
Absolutely.
But like you said earlier, I think there's definitely a few names that we could pull late in the game that might make folks like Jeff Foxworthy very, very happy.
I think the big boy name is probably Mason Smith right now, for everything that's going on at LSU and how horrible of a year it's been. I mean, they're not even a calendar year removed from the best season in college football history, and the whole place is in shambles, which is just crazy.
It hadn't been a bad year for Coach O, if you believe all the pictures you see online.
Yeah, well, you know, I say that he's on the Chiswick cycle right now, and he's going to complete it faster than anyone ever has. It seems like that's the path they're going down.
Yeah, I agree with you, but a guy like Mason Smith, I mean, you know, and you can see, like with us, when Jordan Davis is not in there's a drop off. And so when you have somebody like that on the D line, it changes the game. So that would be awesome. And so what do you think about like guys like Kendall Milton? It's like, you know, just the glimpses we've got of him this year. I think that kid can be really special.
Well, I mentioned this on our show last week. If you've got JT Daniels and potentially running an RPO where he fakes it to Milton and then he throws it to Jermaine Burton, and then all of a sudden, if you've got Bowers, the tight end from California out there, and if Corey Foreman is on the sideline, all of a sudden California's invaded Sanford Stadium. And, you know, that's a group of guys that can get together and really relish that. And I guess you can throw in Darnell Washington if you want to say he was close enough to California.
Sure. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because last year in recruiting, it was all over the country. I mean, we're getting Darnell and Kendall Milton and Keely Ringo and then this year, you know, as I'm looking at it last night, I'm like, dadgum, 8 of the top 10 commits we've got right now are from Georgia. And so, you know, it's funny how it varies from year to year, because it's like this year, Kirby went and kind of locked down the state, you know, and really got the guys, you know, whether it's Mims or whoever that we needed to get from Georgia, which is cool as well.
It doesn't make any sense to me that Amarius Mims can come from Bleckley County, Georgia. I grew up right beside there. I don't know how that happened. I don't know what his parents fed him, but there is something different with that guy.
You know, I mean, it's a little bit like the Isaiah Wilson. It's just, you know, I remember the first time meeting Isaiah Wilson going, this is a different human being. I mean, this is a big, big man right here. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. Or how does the number 1 quarterback come out of Prince Avenue School, you know? But that's exciting to me, you know, and especially if JT continues to develop and you could get Brock in and have a year to kind of learn the system, because you know the game's going to be so much faster just because Brock has been playing at a lower level of high school football. But, you know, those 2 guys back to back, that's an exciting possibility to me.
Very much so. Very much so. Well, is there anything actually coming up for you that you want to sort of plug while you're here? Or no?
No.
I like that he laughed. You hear that? He laughed because he has nothing going on.
The only thing I've had, since I couldn't do shows, I've been developing games. So I developed a game last year called Relative Insanity. And kind of the idea, I wanted it to be funny. And so I came up with 100, it's punchlines and setups. So I thought, what does everybody have in common? Everybody's family is crazy. Everybody's family is crazy. So I wrote 100 setups, and then I wrote 500 punchlines, just things that sounded funny, all involving relatives. So the setup might be right before we walked down the aisle, Daddy leaned over to me and whispered blank. And so everybody's got 7 punchlines in their hand, and you just throw down the one you think they're going to pick as the funniest one. The whole purpose of the game is to make you laugh. Well, that game became the #1 game on Amazon last year. And so then they came back and they were like, so can you think of another game? So I did it with pictures this year, like memes. You look at the picture and then you have the punchlines. And that one's called See What I Mean. But I've developed 3 new games this year. And then Hasbro called me and they wanted to do a Jeff Foxworthy Monopoly game. So instead of, having the New York, Park Avenue and all this stuff, right, I started with like a yard sale and worked around the board up to the water park at the end. So it's kind of a redneck Monopoly. So I just kind of been working on games this year since I couldn't do shows.
Well, I'm originally from West Virginia, so I could basically
all right, pull your feet out from under the desk. I want to see if you have shoes on.
Yes, no shoes. I could fill that game out very much so. And the folks in my home state and my hometown are going to be very, very proud and cool to see that we had a chance to converse.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. And it's fun to talk about things. And that's the thing I probably missed the most this year is just talking to people, and chatting with friends and especially about things that you have a passion about. And so it's cool in a format like this that, Dayne and you both love Georgia football and want nothing more than this program to be successful. And so, it's fun for me to be able to just sit there and talk to people about this.
We'll have to share numbers, and then that way you can brag to your group text and get a little of that inside info.
Yeah.
We definitely got to get you Jake Bruce's number.
I texted them last night because every year we have an argument about who is ROY, which is Recruiter of the Year. And the other guys always have to buy him lunch, whoever the Recruiter of the Year. And we all take credit for everybody that gets signed. So it's really who can argue their case the best. But so last night I texted and I said, hey, by the way, I'm doing the podcast with Brent and Dayne tomorrow about recruiting. So clearly that makes me ROY for 2020. So
I will name you ROI
with me. Yeah.
That's mic drop right there. Indeed, it does.
Drop the mic, walk away. I got it. Free Waffle House lunch.
Well, thank you again. Thanks so much for your time. I know you probably got to, start making some texts about finishing up this year's class while you get to start watching film on the 2022 class, because I know it seems like that's something you're probably already doing, actually.
Oh yeah, we've already got a couple of commits for 2022 that are really exciting as well. So next year is going to be a fun year as well. So this never stops. Especially nowadays, you start recruiting kids in the 8th and 9th and 10th grades. So it's funny, by the time, they graduate, you're like, dadgum, I've been following this kid for 7 years. So yeah, it's pretty neat.
Well, good. Well, thanks again for the time. We appreciate it. If you ever want to come and talk some football or talk recruiting, we will by all means give you an outlet to do so.
Well, I think I've worn out my welcome this time. So you're going to hang up and go, why did you ask him to be on the show? No, but I really enjoyed it. Thank you, guys. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you as well. And
thanks,
we'll happy signing day to you.
Yeah, happy signing day first and then Merry Christmas. So, yeah,
that's right.
I love it.
That's right. Well, thanks again.
You betcha, brother.